It's Wednesday, November 17th. I'm Sarah Y. Kim. The State Board of Education got an earful from parents at a hearing yesterday as they near a decision to lift or keep in place the statewide mask mandate in schools. Baltimore's mayor announces how $55 million will be allocated in the next round of ARPA funds spending. And we have more from our City Hall reporter on a package of bills that may bring back Baltimore's dollar housing program. It's the Daily Dose from WYPR, our latest reporting on Maryland's COVID-19 response and the local news of the day, made possible by GBMC Healthcare. The state COVID testing and vaccination site has moved. Officials say the site, previously known as the Baltimore Convention Center Field Hospital, has moved a few blocks north to a new facility at the State Center on West Preston Street. Officials say the new site offers better access for people who use public transportation, with bus and light rail service just a few blocks away. Masks are back on in Montgomery County. Health officials there say evidence of substantial transmission of COVID-19 in the county has led to a reinstatement of the county's mask mandate. The mandate will go back in effect this Friday night at midnight for anyone over the age of 2 in an indoor public setting. The substantial transmission was reported over a 7-day period. It will take another 7 consecutive days of moderate transmission before the mandate can be lifted again. Scientists at the CDC are working with the Maryland Department of Health to investigate a confirmed case of monkeypox. It's a viral infection that starts with flu-like symptoms and progresses into a widespread rash. It's a strain that has been reemerging in Nigeria since 2017. State health officials say the patient had just returned to the U.S. from Nigeria and is recovering in isolation. Since airline travelers are required to wear masks, the CDC believes the risk of spread of monkeypox virus via respiratory droplets to others on planes is low. The health department says the general public does not need to follow any special health precautions right now. While Baltimore hasn't had its first snow of the season, city officials say that winter weather prep is underway. WYPR's Emily Sullivan reports.
Baltimore has more than 15,000 tons of salt to treat icy roads and 300 workers at the ready. Mayor Brandon Scott says residents should still avoid roads that are normally congested.
Travel at a slow and safe pace. You cannot drive on I-83 when it's raining, let alone when it's snowing, at speeds of 50, 60, 70 miles per hour, which you shouldn't do in the first place.
DPW Director Jason Mitchell says that when temperatures hit 25 degrees or lower, residents should take action to prevent their pipes from freezing.
Keep a thin stream of water running from your faucet in the lowest point of your home. It should be about the size of a pencil.
And when snow hits, residents can visit snow.baltimorecity.gov for updates like road closures. I'm Emily Sullivan reporting for 88.1 WYPR.
Mayor Brandon Scott announced his third major round of American Rescue Plan Act funding yesterday. He'll put $55 million toward workforce development training and a recovery fund for ailing small businesses, nonprofits, and artists. WYPR's Emily Sullivan is here to walk us through these new programs and what they mean to Baltimore. Hi, Emily.
Hey, Sarah.
Remind us how we got here.
So when ARPA was signed into law in the spring, and we first learned that Baltimore would receive $641 million in funding that could be used pretty broadly, Mayor Scott said he'd take some time to decide how to spend all that money. But one of the few things he did promise then was funding programs to help get Baltimoreans back to work and help small businesses recover from the financial toll of the pandemic. And yesterday, he finally announced just what that would look like. He'll give $30 million to fund workforce development programming for disenfranchised groups, and another $25 million will create a recovery fund for ailing small businesses and artists and nonprofits. Here's the messaging he put forward about these funding decisions at a press conference yesterday.
These projects will improve chances of economic successes for those who were systematically disadvantaged even before COVID-19 showed up on our doorstep. And we all know that they were also disproportionately impacted by COVID.
I see. Let's dive into the $30 million for workforce development programming first. What details have we learned?
That sum will flow toward the Mayor's Office of Employment Development, and in turn, they'll divert it to a few key new programs. First, we've got Higher Up. This will be a transitional job program where low-income residents can get paired to city agencies for $15 per hour, 6-month-long positions. It'll cost about $5.2 million, and the administration expects about 220 residents to participate. Then we've got Train Up. This jobs program will connect nearly 1,000 residents to occupational skills training in fields like biotechnology, healthcare, and IT. This will cost roughly $9 million. And Sarah, a big initiative tucked away in this pot of money is more YouthWorks funding. About $8.5 million will be put toward hiring 4,000 city youth over 2 summers and hiring 100 youth during the school year for the first time ever. That program is usually just run during the summer. Jason Perkins Cohen leads the office that will oversee these new programs. He says this is the largest investment in workforce training in city history.
We're all about jobs, but they don't always lead to careers, and ours need to. So our residents want and deserve a pathway to careers that provide for their families.
His office will also be providing wage subsidies for small, minority, and women-owned businesses.
So, programming that both hires residents and seeks to guide them into a career. What about the $25 million to create an economic relief fund?
Right. So Scott is positing this funding decision as a way to get unemployed Baltimoreans back on the job and at the same time offering a badly needed lifeline to small businesses that have floundered amid the pandemic's financial uncertainty. So the $25 million fund will be split up in a few ways, with quasi-agencies, groups that are partially funded by the city, administering different pots of money. So first up, we've got the Baltimore Development Corporation, also known as BDC. They are going to receive about $12 million to support small business relief through grants. And they have a goal of issuing 70% of those grants to Black or Brown-owned businesses, which were disproportionately financially hit by the pandemic. Another $8.3 million is going to go to the Baltimore Civic Fund. They will divert this to more than 300 nonprofit organizations. And the argument here is that these nonprofits really stepped up amid the challenges of the pandemic to provide greater services than ever to city residents. The Family League of Baltimore, they're going to get $2 million to support Baltimore's childcare industry. What that will look like is administering grant relief for an estimated 160 childcare providers, prioritizing those that didn't get financial aid last year. Domain Millard is the CEO of the Family League of Baltimore. He says that city childcare businesses, which in normal times have a thin overhead, have really had to grapple with widely varying attendances as offices went remote or shuttered altogether and more parents kept their kids at home.
The thing that I remember most in 2020 was being on the phone with a child care provider who was holding back tears and said, Mr. Millard, I don't know what I'm going to do. Either I'm going to stay in business, go further in debt, and maybe have to go into bankruptcy. I said, well, obviously it's a very difficult decision that you have to make, but I hear the kids in the background. And she said, but the need in the community is still there. So in the meanwhile, well, who are you serving? Well, the parents are essential workers. They're registered nurses working right over at Johns Hopkins. They're lab technicians.
Visit Baltimore will receive $2.5 million to aid the hospitality industry, specifically in bringing hotel workers back to the job. Al Hutchinson is the president and CEO of that group. He says hotel workers are predominantly Black or brown.
It's a mom that lives right here in East Baltimore, raising her family, that works in one of these hotels in Baltimore City. It's a dad who lives in West Baltimore, trying to educate his kids, sending them to school, that works in a hotel in Baltimore City. There's a young kid who goes to college at Coppin or Morgan State that's working part-time at a hotel. A lot of these folks were impacted when COVID hit. They lost their jobs.
Finally, Baltimore's Office of Promotion and Arts, or BOPA, they'll get $500,000 to support local artists through direct grants. That will be divvied up into grants worth $3,500 apiece for artists and creators who were financially impacted by the pandemic, which closed galleries, theaters, music venues, festivals, and public events. That shuttered both the creative expression and income of the city's artistic community.
And how can eligible residents apply to these grants?
arp.baltimorecity.gov will have that information, along with application timelines and tips.
Emily Sullivan covers Baltimore City politics for WYPR. Thanks, Emily.
Thank you, Sarah. Always a pleasure.
Welcome to ClearPath, your roadmap to health and wealth. I'm your host, Al Waller.
ClearPath, your roadmap to health and wealth, is all about helping people make informed decisions about important matters that can affect our daily lives.
Each week, we delve into specific topics and offer food for thought and practical tips for listeners.
Here's hoping you'll join Catherine, Nahel, and me every week. You can find ClearPath, your roadmap to health and wealth, on WYPR's Podcast Central and mobile app, wherever you get your podcasts, and at transamericainstitute.org.
The Maryland State Board of Education held a special meeting Tuesday to review its statewide masking mandate for public schools. Board members heard from parents across the state on whether to continue masking. The statewide mask mandate, which has been in place since the beginning of the school year, is set to expire on February 25, 2022. But the board may reevaluate that end date, as 5 to 11-year-olds are now eligible for the COVID-19 vaccine. Local school systems are also reporting fewer cases than they were in October, according to the State Department of Education. Parents in support of the mandate urged the board to wait until the majority of students get vaccinated, citing evidence that masks help prevent transmission of COVID. Kristen Caminiti, a mother of 4 in Anne Arundel County, said masking protected her 6th grader when he was exposed to a classmate with COVID. Her son is also vaccinated.
Now is not the time to change our protocols around masks. While many people continue to resist vaccinations, the only way out of this pandemic, it is not time to relax our efforts to mitigate the spread of this disease.
Jared DeCoste, a father of 2, said there are at least 4 COVID-19 cases in his 1st grader's classroom, and that an additional 10 to 12 students have had to quarantine for nearly 2 weeks.
If we unmask students during heightened rates of transmission, though this will become more common, severely disrupting learning for many students.
Parents who oppose the mandate said it was an abuse of power by the state board and that the decision should be left to local school boards. Some, like Benjamin Heiser, said masking can be stressful for children with special needs. Heiser said his youngest daughter relies on facial cues to communicate.
And because she can't see the teacher's face, she's learning by tone. And as I speak to my daughter, she'll interpret the tone as something may be bad, and she'll start crying and say that she's sorry.
Heiser said he's opposed to a mandate, but that if it must continue, the state should issue a protocol for mask hygiene, suggesting specific guidance on what kind of mask to wear, how to wash them, and how often you should change them. Renee Averett Sansoni is the executive director of the Parents' Place of Maryland, a nonprofit that serves children with disabilities and special health care needs. Averett Sansoni spoke in favor of masks, saying that until vaccines are widespread, they are an important tool. But she agreed that some children with disabilities or special needs may need more flexibility, and that individualized education programs can help.
So if a child has a great deal of difficulty wearing a mask or being able to access their education, or for whatever reason, that is a conversation that needs to happen within the context of that child's individualized education program, and that the team works together to support the child in whatever works best for that child being able to access their education.
Veronica Golden, a K-5 arts teacher and mother of a 3-year-old in Charles County, said she is worried that her child, who can't get vaccinated yet, could get COVID. Masking, Golden said, reduces that risk.
I understand that they're uncomfortable. I understand that it causes anxiety, but they are necessary at this time. We have seen what happens when we have removed the masks too soon. It is imperative that we put the safety of kids first. They are our future, and without them, what are we going to do?
Board members are set to reconvene in early December to make a final decision on whether or not to keep the mask mandate in place. Council President Nick Mosby is aiming to resurrect Baltimore's popular dollar housing program through a package of new housing affordability bills introduced this week. Here again is Emily Sullivan.
When Baltimore first ran a dollar home program in the 1970s, there was so much demand that the city had to award the homes through a lottery. The premise was, and is, simple. Residents lease a vacant home owned by the city for just $1 over a 2-year period. During that time, they pay for repairs to make the homes habitable. Afterwards, the city transfers the title to those residents who are able to build wealth while chipping away at Baltimore's high number of vacants. This process breathed new life into neighborhoods such as Pigtown, life that has sustained over the decades.
We're bringing back the Dollar House program, but revamping it to target legacy residents as well as city employees living in historically disinvested communities.
That's Council President Nick Mosby. He says his Dollar House program would help close the racial wealth gap by creating an affordable pathway to homeownership, particularly for residents in redlined black neighborhoods that experience systemic disinvestment in the early 20th century. Homeownership rates for black Baltimoreans are on the decline, according to a 2020 report from the Able Foundation. The Dollar House program would only be open to those who have lived in Baltimore for at least 15 continuous years, those who have lived in a redline neighborhood for at least 10 years, and city workers who have been employed by Baltimore for at least 5 years. Again, here's Mosby.
They've been shut out of these opportunities previously, and this program allows them access.
His legislation specifies that the dollar homes would be in neighborhoods historically overlooked by investors and revitalization efforts. Anthony Presley is the executive director of the Druid Heights Community Development Corporation. He says this focus ensures that resources flow to where they are most needed.
It's been said by people in the community that the focus is on downtown. Well, we don't live downtown. We live over here. And it's very important that we get the resources, the support we need to bring up our communities.
Another bill in Mosby's package would create a home repairs grant program. The same group of city residents would qualify for repair grants of up to $25,000. Councilman John Bullock is the lead sponsor of the repairs bill. He says the grants would aid those struggling to make ends meet and at risk of losing their homes.
We have a number of seniors who are looking to age in place in their homes and may need to retrofit those homes.
Another bill would create a program to give senior residents grants of up to $5,000 to make payments toward reverse mortgages. That is, a loan in which homeowners convert property equity to cash payments, often to financially support themselves during retirement. Mosby's proposed programs would cost around $200 million. His legislation names a funding source, the American Rescue Plan Act. Baltimore has $641 million in ARPA funding, and Mayor Brandon Scott has the final say in how it's spent. Mosby argues that the ARPA funds represent a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity and should be put toward correcting a handful of systemic issues.
Not only can we provide opportunities for folks that have been living with the crime, the grime, the blight, but providing them access to potentially becoming homeowners and developing generational wealth.
Mosby said that his team sat down with Scott staffers on Friday to discuss the bills and share data from similar programs in other cities. Scott spokesman Cal Harris disputed that, saying in a statement that the mayor's office has not received details about the council president's proposed legislation, but that Scott will carefully consider any ideas advanced by the city council. He added that Scott is intentional about using ARPA money to make a transformative impact and that the administration will soon announce a substantial investment in historically redlined neighborhoods. I'm Emily Sullivan, reporting for 88.1 WYPR.
We're always happy to hear from you, and we'll be here for you again on Friday. The Daily Dose is brought to you by WYPR, made possible by GBMC Healthcare. Big thanks to my colleagues on the WYPR News team, Rachel Bay, John Lee, Joel McCord, and Emily Sullivan. Our digital content director is Jamila Crumple, and our general manager is LaFontaine Oliver. The executive editor of the Daily Dose is Danielle Irby. Stay healthy, stay sane, and stand together. I'm Sarah Y. Kim. Thanks for listening.